Game week 32 has gone all right for me so far. I've scored 45 points and I'm slightly down to 48k overall. But my bench boost is active. And here are my transfer plans for game week 33. All right, so we've got to start off by looking at how my team has gotten on so far in game week 32. Across the back line, I've got to say it has been a little bit disappointing so far. Raya, obviously conceding to Brentford. Guardiola, a one-pointer, obviously in that 5-2 game against Crystal Palace. Munoz, obviously conceding 5 goals in that game and unfortunately not coming away with an attacking return. I thought at the start of that game it would go completely differently. You know, Palace were absolutely destroying Man City down Palace's right-hand side, but it just didn't come to fruition. Came away with a 0-pointer. Obviously, they're still playing Newcastle to go. Likewise, Dan Burn, who obviously conceded the 1 goal against Man United, he's still got to play Crystal Palace, so maybe both of them could score a goal. That would be really good for my points. Looking back to Dan Burn, I picked him over Livramento because I trusted in his minutes more, and I figured that over the double game week, that might come into play, and so far it hasn't really. But yeah, I think I'm hopeful for what Dan Burn can do in the other fixture from an attacking perspective. I'm pretty sure he had some chances to score, well, had chances against Man United. So yeah, anyway, Sarr and Murphy both with assists respectively. Happy with both of them. Rodgers with an assist as well. Salah with an assist too. So all 4 of my midfielders with an assist. I've obviously got a second fixture from Sarr and Jacob Murphy to go. I'm really pleased I went for Jacob Murphy over Anthony Gordon. Gordon got some minutes coming on for Harvey Barnes against Man United. Did he come on for Harvey Barnes? Can't actually remember that. But Gordon got some minutes. However, I think the decision to go for Murphy over Gordon was rewarded. You know, I got the brace against Leicester. I've got the assist so far. And I think, you know, he's going to start the next game against Palace, in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with Jacob Murphy. Marmoush with obviously his goal. Isak got an assist for Newcastle. So as my captain, he scores 10 points so far. And then Mateta subbed off at half-time by Glasner by what was described as, well, more of a tactical decision. But also he did comment that he didn't think Mateta had his best game. He wasn't holding the ball up very well amongst other things. How does that bode for him starting against Newcastle and then for game week 33 in general? I don't think we can draw any conclusions, and I don't think I can be upset about it, right? Picking Mateta ahead of a double game week with the form that he was in, 2 consecutive double game weeks, with the form that he was in, was a decision I'd make 100% of the time all over again. So whatever happens in this second game of game week 32, it is what it is as far as I'm concerned. And I think around my ranking, around most people watching this video, most people probably have him in their team already. So I'm not too worried about Mateta. And if, you know, he doesn't start in the second fixture against Newcastle, we get some news from Glasner that, you know, he's not very happy with him, etc., then we might do something for game week 33. But based on the information we've got so far, he's going to stay in my team. Not much to say about the bench, really. I've got Saliba, Saka, Konsa, and Areola on there. I was really in 2 minds about who to start out of Guardiola and Saliba on my deadline stream. I ended up going for Guardiola because I heard Kuzanov had come back from his wedding. I believe he was away for a wedding, or his wedding, which is a little bit strange for a footballer to go away mid-season for their wedding. They tend to do that kind of thing in the summer. But anyway, I thought that Guardiola had a chance of playing at left back, and that was enough to tip it for me to start Guardiola over Saliba. Obviously, there's 1 point in it between the 2 players, so you know, I'm not going to lose any sleep over that decision or whether it went right or wrong. The only other one I had was who to start, basically, out of, well, Rodgers, Marmoush, Saka. I just felt that Rodgers' expected minutes were better than Saka's. I felt Marmoush was going to start, and it was kind of between between Rodgers and Saka then, and I just give Saka the edge. I give Rodgers the edge. I just thought Unai Emery absolutely loves him. And the point was proven. He played 85 minutes versus Southampton in between 2 critical games against PSG in the Champions League. I think for me, that also bodes really well for his minutes in game week 33. You know, regardless of what football he's had around him, he seems to still be favoured in the Premier League. All right, and then just a quick look at how my team is going to line up ahead of game week 33. Then we'll talk about some of my transfer plans. So I've got 2 free transfers and 2 million in the bank. So far, I'm starting, well, it doesn't really matter because my bench boost is active, so I don't need to talk through my starting 11 because all 15 of my assets are going to play. There are a couple that I would say, a little bit unsure of, and The first one is Saka. I'm a little bit worried about how many minutes he's going to get across the double, right? They're 3-0 up against Madrid in the Champions League. I guess in reality, we need to see how that game plays out on Wednesday before we can come to a final conclusion on Saka. But my opinion is that he's going to get enough minutes across this double game week to make him worth picking. That's my belief at the moment. So I wouldn't say I'm 100% happy with him by any stretch, but I think he's probably the best Arsenal midfielder you can go for. You know, considering the fact when he's on the pitch, he's going to take penalties, takes corners. He's Arsenal's best player, right? It's obviously Arteta resting him for the Champions League, but he can't. I don't know. I just can't see him getting 2 benchings in a row in the Premier League again. Like, even if they go through, and obviously, I'm not saying this will happen. I think the most likely scenario is that Arsenal go through now after winning 3-0. But stranger things have happened, especially at the Bernabeu of Real Madrid making these kinds of comebacks. And, you know, if Real Madrid were to win the tie, I think Saka's 100% nailed on for the rest of the Premier League season, isn't he? So that's kind of one doubt I've got. The other couple of doubts that I've got, or players that I might want to consider moving on, are Dan Burn and Jacob Murphy. And the player that I think I'm eyeing up at the moment is Marco Asensio. Now, I think since he's signed for Aston Villa, he has probably been the best player of theirs that I've seen. It's really hard to sort of just gloss over what happened in Gameweek 32. You know, the fact he missed 2 penalties against Southampton. But I think that just shows me he's probably not going to be their penalty taker, which doesn't really change too much for me about him. Yeah, I've been really impressed with Marco Asensio, and I think Newcastle at home, Man City away are not the 2 worst fixtures you could ask for. I think they could score in those games, particularly Asensio. And just looking at those Villa fixtures, it's just how many minutes he's going to get during this double. You know, he didn't start against PSG. He started against Southampton. My view is he probably doesn't start again against... because he's at PSG at the moment, right? It's his parent club. There must have been a reason why Emery left him out against PSG. It kind of makes sense. You know, PSG know how he plays, etc. I think he's going to get left out again. That would be my opinion. He gets benched again. Unless Emery thinks, we lost the last tie. We need to change the team, bring him in and try and change them. That could possibly happen, but I think most likely he won't start. And then I think that opens him up to starting against Newcastle. And then I think he probably gets some minutes against Man City. And then obviously they blank in Gameweek 34, which we don't care about really. So I do like Asensio as an option. And quite honestly, I look at, again, this is from my buy and avoid video I made earlier in the week. I look at all the other Aston Villa assets that are available, right? Outside of Asensio, you've got Watkins. I can't really want to sell Isak to get him in. You could get Rashford, but again, he's sharing too many minutes in my opinion with Watkins. I don't trust it. I don't really like any of the other midfielders or forwards from Villa. I don't like any of the other defenders. I think Martinez is a bit boring. And I've already got Raya who doubles. And Areola who's got Southampton. I just don't see any other Aston Villa assets that are appealing to me. So one of the moves I'm certainly looking to make is Jacob Murphy to Asensio. All right then. So we'll just check this team one last time because there's one other player that I'm looking at potentially moving on. And, well, he doesn't have a double in 33 when I'm bench boosting. And neither does the player that I'm bringing in. But I think I need to get rid of Dan Burn. If I'm playing my bench boost, I think I can do better. So I am potentially looking at bringing this. I'm still a little bit unsure about making this move. But I quite like the look of Conor Bradley. I think his place in this Liverpool starting lineup, barring a really poor run of form or injury, I think it's pretty safe. I mean, judging by the Liverpool fans' reaction to Trent, not even announcing that he's off to Madrid, just the rumours and everything that went around about Trent going to Madrid, I just don't see Trent being able to play for Liverpool again. You know, he wasn't on the bench, but he was on like the players' bench for injured players or whatever at the weekend or yesterday against West Ham. I just don't think Trent's going to play for Liverpool again. That's my personal opinion. I think Arne Slot will stick to his principles. And, you know, the league title for Liverpool is already wrapped up. You know, they don't really need to play Trent in any of these games to prove anything, unless he signs a new contract before the end of the season or whatever. So, yeah, I think Conor Bradley looks like a really good option. And then you look at the fixture he's got in Gameweek 33 against Leicester. you know, the opportunity to play a Liverpool defender against Leicester, I think is a pretty strong one. The only thing I would say about Bradley, I guess, is that his fixtures after Leicester are not all that amazing. We'll just look at Liverpool on this list. They've got Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal, Brighton, Crystal Palace to finish off the season. And of course, they'll have the league title wrapped up. But I do like the thought of just having him as an option. I can bench him if I need to at his price point. But yeah, I think that kind of works. I think I'm going to go for Conor Bradley for Dan Burn. The only other doubt I have around these transfers, right, particularly the Asensio one, and just now looking at these fixtures, is what do I do in Game Week 37? Because my team is going to be loaded with players that are likely blanking in Game Week 37. That's the only real concern that I have. I'm free hitting in 34. I've got no other option but to do that. And I'll only have a couple of free transfers come that time to actually deal with Game Week 37. So with that in mind, I'm conscious that bringing in Asensio and Bradley short term are going to be good for my team for Game Week 33 and maximising the points I get from my bench boost. But thinking further down the line, it's whether, you know, I'm probably going to have to take hits for Game Week 37. It's whether having those two players is worth it for Game Week 30. Sorry, whether having those two players in Game Week 33 and the points that they could score me is worth it to kind of sacrifice it for Game Week 37. Maybe I should just do Asensio. I think Asensio is almost locked really for Murphy because I think that move makes sense. And then the Dan Burn to Bradley one, I'm a little bit more unsure of. All right, well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. Felt a little bit rambly, so apologies for that, but that's kind of the nature of these videos, you know. I'm thinking aloud about my transfer plans, and that's kind of where I am. So I think I'm going to do Murphy as much as I loved him. I think I'm going to do Murphy to Asensio, and then I'm kind of in the air about whether I should get rid of Dan Burn. You could also let me know in the comments if there's any other transfers you'd suggest. I'd be really interested to that. Just let me know. Or let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave me a like rating as well. If you haven't already and want to see more content from me, please subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel. It should be just there on your screen. I think it'd be absolutely great if we could hit 14,000 subscribers by the end of the season. That's my target. So yeah, hopefully we can get there. All right. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in my next video.